Welcome! You have now boarded Azure Airlines. Please discontinue the use of all electronic devices at this time, and be certain to properly stow all carry-on items. We are ready for takeoff. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy your ride through the cloud.
Thank you for joining us. I am your pilot, Andrew. Joining us is Jolene, Susie, and Matt. We'll be taking you through this wonderful trip. I'll start us off by giving us a little introduction to what Microsoft Azure is, and just explain also a little bit about its history and how it came to be. So with Microsoft Azure, basically it is a cloud computing service created by Microsoft, and it's essentially a way to build, test, deploy, and manage applications and other services through the data centers that Microsoft provides. Under the Azure brand, Microsoft provides tools for infrastructure as a service and platform as a service, which we'll show in a little bit. Additionally, Azure supports many different programming languages, tools, and other frameworks. And a little bit about the history of Azure. It began in the mid-2000s as an internal project named Project Red Dog. Not exactly sure why it was called that, but I just thought that was interesting. And at that time, Amazon Web Services had launched their cloud services, and this was Microsoft's way to start catching up with them. Next, when things were ready to come together, they announced its creation in October of 2008, and originally named the service Windows Azure, not Microsoft Azure. However, it was not completely rolled out at that time. Over the next few years, they focused on adding new features and improving the service for the users. And then they finally launched Windows Azure for commercial use in 2010. And then a few years after that, Microsoft realized that its cloud computing service had moved beyond just Windows, so they decided to rename the service to Microsoft Azure in 2014. And from then on, Microsoft has continued to add many new features and capabilities to continually improve their cloud services.
Hello again. Let's go through some of the services that are provided from Microsoft Azure. Below are listed the services that are provided by Microsoft Azure. You might recognize a few of them, such as compute, networking, and data storage. If we go to Microsoft Azure's webpage, azure.microsoft.com, here under the Products tab, we can see some of these services. Under Compute, we see virtual machines and cloud services that provide APIs and scalability. We have networking services, storage services such as backup and site recovery. But let's focus on the services that are under Data and Analytics, Machine Learning. This experiment demonstrates a typical usage of recommender modules in Azure Machine Learning. Recommenders are good for rating or predicting similar items that users might like based on past habits and item characteristics. The recommendation algorithms are currently in use in website advertisings on social media sites, all types of e-commerce sites, sponsored search results, returned from search engines, and so on. In this experiment, we've trained a recommender engine to recommend top restaurants to customers. As you can see, we use 3 data sets: restaurant customers, restaurant feature, and restaurant ratings in this experiment. The data sets describe the restaurants, their customers, and the ratings they give. Let's look at some of the restaurants that have been predicted for the users that have visited their stores. As you can see, here we have the users listed, as well as their top 5 recommended restaurants according to their preferences and likes.
So for the next leg of our trip, we're going to go over some of the many benefits of utilizing Microsoft Azure. Some benefits include its ability to be closely integrated with other Microsoft tools, its excellent standing, reliability, the fact that it's a leading infrastructure as a service and platform as a service provider, and its strong BI and analytics support. First, for organizations that rely heavily on Microsoft tools, integrating these existing tools can be very easy as Microsoft Azure can be seamlessly integrated. Organizations can also simplify their operations by using the same OSs in the virtual machines they create in Azure as they use on-premise, such as Windows and Linux. Some of the common integrated Microsoft tools organizations use are SharePoint, Office 365, and Outlook. Microsoft Azure is also considered one of the most credible and reliable long-standing brands in history. This can be particularly important for small organizations, as this brings a certain sense of security. In fact, the majority of Azure users say that they use the platform primarily because they consider Microsoft a trusted industry leader. Microsoft Azure also has a global presence and is available in 36 regions around the world, and is backed by Microsoft's growing number of global managed data centers. Microsoft Azure also provides a 99.95% availability and 24/7 tech support and health monitoring. Because Azure is an industry leader in both infrastructure as a service and platform as a service, companies can more quickly build, deploy, and manage their applications. And lastly, Microsoft Azure has a strong BI and analytics support, which companies can use to more deeply analyze data in real time and derive key insights for improved business processes and decision making. If we look at the Gartner research, Microsoft Azure is considered one of the top 2 leaders for business intelligence and analytics platforms. Azure provides managed SQL and NoSQL data services. For example, a company could choose to leverage a Azure SQL Server and HD Insight, which is Azure's Apache Hadoop-based cloud and big data analytics service.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the captain has turned on the fasten seatbelt sign due to some upcoming turbulence as we fly into the drawbacks of Microsoft Azure Cloud Services. So here we have an overview of some of the drawbacks or cons to using Microsoft Azure. It is worth pointing out that it was pretty hard to find a lot of cons with Azure. All of the major cloud service providers are actually great, and it mostly just depends on your unique environment or your circumstances as to which you should go with. And so these are just some ideas of some issues or things that might be hard if you're trying to move your services to Azure. So we're going to talk about the Windows ecosystem, we're going to talk about some support issues, and we're also going to talk about cost. So earlier, we talked about how one of the benefits to Azure is that it plays very nicely with other Microsoft tools. However, if you're a company that uses open source development tools, it could be a little bit harder for you to move to Azure. Another thing is that Azure has traditionally pushed Windows Server on their customers, but it sounds like support for Linux is growing and continues to grow. Another example of some drawbacks with using Azure is some support issues. So according to Gartner in 2017, Azure has had some issues with technical support, documentation, training, and breadth of the ISV partner ecosystem. There have also been some customer complaints that customer service is lacking at times with certain services, and this could be due to aggressive growth. It seems like AWS is generally seen as the innovator, and then Microsoft Azure kind of has to keep up with AWS as they continue to change the market. And lastly, we have cost. So Azure is generally going to be more expensive than AWS, but again, it really just depends. One thing to point out is that Microsoft usually offers discounts for bigger companies that are able to pay up front and also sign long-term contracts. So here we have a couple examples of some major companies that utilize Microsoft Azure for their cloud services. So again, it really just depends whether you're a small startup or a large corporation. Different cloud service providers are going to give you different costs and have different pros and cons.
We hope you've enjoyed this ride with us with Azure Airlines. We know you have a choice when it comes to airlines, so thanks for choosing us.